Nothing says Mardi Gras in St. Louis like the floats in the annual Mardi Gras parades. The most creative, audacious float is usually made by a crew that's been at it nearly 20 years, the Mystic Knights of the Purple Haze.
In the first year, we saw the way the other floats were, and we knew that based on the effort we made that we could improve upon that and be the best float in the parade.
In a few moments, we're going to show you how the Mystic Knights planned and constructed their 2007 float. But first, a little background on the crew. It all started with a group of St. Louis friends, some of whom were graduates of a college in Mobile, Alabama. That city is just a 2-hour drive from the home of America's biggest Mardi Gras celebration, New Orleans. Founding member Matt Reardon was one of the first recruits.
One of my buddies called up and said, "Hey, I got this idea, let's get involved in the Soulard Mardi Gras. I know all the traditions of Mardi Gras." Right from the beginning, we called ourselves a crew, spelled with a K, and named ourselves the Mystic Knights of the Purple Haze because that is similar to what they do in New Orleans.
The very first Mystic Knights float was called a Festival of Faces. 2 weeks before the 1989 parade, construction began in a crew member's garage.
We just built a frame on a trailer and a frame on the back of a pickup truck, and then the night before the parade, he threw a big party, and we put this thing together. We stayed up all night and put that float together.
A lot more thought and work went into the floats that followed. The first one to capture first place was made in 1992 and had as its theme the death of communism in the Soviet Union.
We had a funeral pyre with themes, with a sickle and hammer theme. We all wore funeral attire. We actually had a casket on wheels that we were pushing behind a hearse.
A few years later, after the city of St. Louis lost its bid for an NFL expansion franchise, the Mystic Knights of the Purple Haze lampooned the Purple Stallions.
Our float was based on a purple stallion flat on its belly on top of Busch Stadium. We were all dressed in football uniforms, and we had the original soundtrack of the Go-Go Purple Stallion song that was being played on the radio and by the TV stations. We got a hold of that soundtrack. We played it for the judges in front of the judges' stand, and it was absolutely perfect.
But to Matt Reardon, the most memorable float to date is from 1993 and was inspired by the children's book Alice in Wonderland.
Because of the great costumes, the creativity, the way that we were able to cover the entire book from start to finish, and then add a little touch to make it funny for everybody along the parade route.
That little touch was a giant head of Bill Clinton. It was on the body of the water pipe smoking caterpillar in the Alice in Wonderland tale. Hence the irreverent title of the float, Inhale to the Chief. 4 weeks before the Mardi Gras Grand Parade in Soulard, we made our first visit to the Mystic Knights workshop. It takes up part of a South St. Louis factory owned by a crew member.
Okay, so zip ties and scissors.
For 2007, all Mardi Gras floats had a theme based on a novel.
The novel that we chose is George Orwell's 1984, because Big Brother seems to be watching us all the time at this point. These are all rough sketches. This is a very early one. Basically, we're building a pyramid on the float with an eyeball that's going to be popping out, which is Big Brother watching us. There are several different ministries in the book. The Ministry of Plenty, which over here we have gas pumps that we're making to signify the plentiness. This is the mock-up, basically. This is going to go on the trailer. We built a frame on the inside that's going to house the Johnny on the Spot. These are the 4 walls of the pyramid. And so on each corner is going to be a column signifying each of the different ministries. And on the top it'll be hidden. They give us a height limit of 13 feet, so we build the float to 13 and then extend it so that it's around 18 or 19 so that you can really see a lot more of it. And, you know, we never really know what the next step is until we're actually doing it. It's kind of search and find and do as you go.
The Grand Parade and Fat Tuesday Parade are organized by the nonprofit group Mardi Gras Incorporated. As part of its annual planning process, Mardi Gras Inc. holds a mandatory safety meeting.
I cannot emphasize enough that the parade is over at Sydney Street.
The person that absolutely must be here is the driver of the float. They must arrive to go through all of the safety instructions. Usually a crew representative is also here so that they can then take our message back to their crews and talk about what we tell them at this meeting.
Parade safety and security procedures are reviewed and improved with each Mardi Gras season. Critical improvements were made in the mid-1990s after the number of revelers swelled into the tens of thousands and spilled onto the route that wound through the streets of the Soulard neighborhood. Both the Grand Parade and Fat Tuesday Parade have since been rerouted and barricades erected.
The last year that it went through the old Soulard neighborhood, it was about 70 degrees that day. There's a photograph of our float that probably has 100,000 people the year that we had Tiny Tim, and there are no barricades. It may not look like there's been a lot of progress, but there's been a lot of activity to get to this point.
The second time we checked on the progress of the Mystic Knights' latest float, they had a week and a half remaining to complete it. Two of the most important tasks had been tackled: installing the mandatory Johnny on the Spot and building the mechanism that would raise and lower the float's centerpiece eyeball.
The eye will actually sit above this platform and will go up to approximately 16 feet, about 3 feet clear of the top of the float in order to be seen.
As for the focal point, so to speak, it was taking shape.
There'll be another cover of foam which will stretch over, and have the veins and so forth for the eye in it. And then we have electric, which is going to come up from the tube, from a PVC tube inside, and there'll be LED lights, and the eyeball will light up.
The costumes for 1984's various enforcers, including the Thought Police and those dreaded rats, were made from a base of unisex jumpsuits.
We can use these every year for every costume. You can build and just layer on these things, and then that way that day, all they have to do is zip it up.
The big day brought the moment of truth for the Ministry of Truth. The crew bundled up against the late winter chill, assembled its newest creation, and set out for the parade. Once the float cleared power lines and an underpass along the route, the pièce de résistance revealed itself. At the reviewing stand, judges rated each float on criteria including adherence to theme and originality. They retired to tally the scores, then called Mardi Gras Inc. to announce the winner.
First place in the floats is number 89, the Mystic Knights of the Purple Haze.
The crew also won first place for their costumes. Though happy with the victory, their thoughts were with Matt Reardon. He missed the parade for the first time since becoming a Mystic Knight for one of the few reasons that could ever keep him from being there.
My father had passed away. The funeral was the day of the parade. Had there been one day separation, there's no doubt that I would have still been at the parade.
It's a testament to Reardon's Mardi Gras family and their annual creative pursuit.
At first we got involved in it just for fun. I mean, clearly just for the sake of having fun. But there is a feeling of pride when you've done a good job, when you look at something that brings so many people joy.